You're listening to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. I'm Allison Boyle, aka She Dreams of Alpine, and this is the show that's dedicated to all the adventurous spirits out there who have either been transformed by the outdoors or are interested in what it looks like to step into a new, adventurous, and courageous kind of identity in their life. It doesn't matter what your background is in the outdoors, what age you're starting at, or where you grew up. If you're curious about the outdoors and using adventure as a way to reinvent yourself, you're in the right place. I'll be sharing all kinds of personal adventure stories, lessons I've learned from the mountains, teaching what I know about the outdoors and leadership, and interviewing some amazing adventurous women all along the way. I've been coaching women on becoming safe, confident, and self-sufficient backpackers and leaders of their own adventurous lives since 2018, and I know exactly what big fears and self-doubts can pop up along the way. I have so much to share with you, so let's dive in. All right, welcome to episode 7 of our Adventurous Reinvention podcast. I am so stoked to have one of my dearest close friends here with me. Her name is Marie Pier. What's funny about Marie is that What's funny about Marie is that we met on Instagram. So we were Instagram friends before we became in real life friends. So when we first met, it was because I had seen Marie doing some really cool things with Thru-Hiking because she had hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, which we're going to talk all about in today's podcast episode. And we just started having some back and forth, kind of like slow banter. And then eventually we kind of became friends because we were both business owners. And then one day I think I messaged her. We had done some things, talked a lot, maybe done some coaching together. I can't remember. It's been a while now. I think we've been friends for a few years, maybe even longer, 4 years. I don't know.
More than four.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. I was
like
like, actually,
5.
it's been quite a long time now. We did some things together, and then I was like, hey, there's this coaching event going on in Arizona. Do you want to go? And we risked it all. We'd never met in real life. Like we booked a room together for a 3-day event, and we could have really not enjoyed each other's company in like person, you know what I mean? That was a big risk, but it worked out. We decided to do some business things together. We did like a course together one year. I think it was in 2022-ish. Yeah, 2022, I believe, or
Yes.
2023. It was like 2022 going into 2023.
Can I just
Uh,
say, can I just tell your listeners
oh
that
yeah.
you ended up, we spent those 4 days together and you ended up being like even more funny and even smarter than I thought. So,
I definitely liked you more afterwards too. I was like, wow, this gamble really worked out. I actually use this example with a lot of my clients. This is a sidebar. I'm like in the middle of introducing Marie and we're already on sidebars.
I didn't
But
even say hi. Hi,
yeah, she
everyone.
hasn't said hi yet.
So happy to be on
Um,
your podcast.
I know I'm like too excited that I'm talking too much. But I use this example with my friends, my clients a lot, and my friends. Let's be honest, like I'm friendly with a lot of my clients. So they'll sometimes say it's hard to make new friends. And I'm like, you're right. Like sometimes as an adult, it can be hard to make friends and you have to like take risks. And I took a risk with Marie, fully knowing that a possible outcome could have been we are just really awkward in person together. Like it could have just like maybe we just jived really well DMing each other and like on calls, and maybe we just didn't jive in person. And I was like, and it was worth the risk. Like because we became such, I feel like much closer after doing that in-person thing together. So,
Yeah, after spending like hours in bed chatting into the night.
yes. Yeah. So like sometimes, yeah, you're risking rejection, you're risking awkwardness, and it's worth it. Like I think, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But yeah, okay. We've continued our friendship. She lives in Montreal, so it's a little hard to meet up in real life, but we do try to do it like once a year. But I'm so excited to have her on our podcast. Finally, a lot of y'all have heard me, talk about her on Instagram if you follow me there. But we're going to talk a little bit more about Marie's journey. She was an illustrator, then she became a life coach. We want to talk about her PCT hike. I really wanted to have her on to talk about kind of her different sort of her own personal adventurous reinventions, and what inspired her and all the things. So I would love Marie to take the stage for a few minutes, maybe introduce yourself a little better than I have if I haven't taken the stage too much from you already.
Hello, everyone. Sure, thank you, Allison. I am a self-growth nerd. I've always been, and I pursued that passion and became a coach. I work with quirky, sensitive, ambitious, weird souls who who want to go all in, who want to go after what really lights them up, but are kind of stuck in a shell. Maybe like if you're like me, you were kind of bullied in school and you might have um I don't know, internalized some of the messaging and you're not going fully towards what you want because you have a lot of self-doubt. These are the people that I work with
I
so
love
that
it.
they can own their weirdness and believe in their dreams and take action.
Yeah, and Marie does such a good job of it. If you've ever just like followed what she posts on Instagram, and she's had a long time podcast, we'll talk a little bit more about some of those things, I'm sure. But you're so good at that. I think that's what drew me to you in the first place. But let's rewind back to that beginning place, like where we kind of intersected. Because I was starting my business in the outdoor industry. I was coaching people on backpacking, and I ran across your stuff, which was after you had finished the Pacific Crest Trail. Um, and just for those who are new around here, or maybe haven't heard of the Pacific Crest Trail and you're not familiar with it, this is kind of a really world famous through hike. And it's 2,653 miles long. It typically, most people start in Mexico. They usually go south to north, but you can go north to south. So it starts in Mexico, ends in Canada at the border. Or you can start in Canada and go south. But typically, I think people do it south to north. Did you do it
It's
south to north?
yeah, South Sonora, and there's a section where I flipped. But yeah, it starts at the border of Mexico in California.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a really long through hike. A lot of people take, I mean, I don't know how long you
Six
can tell me.
months.
6 months. Most people take around 6 months. You can do it a little faster, but it's pretty aggressive to do it faster. It's a huge undertaking, and a lot of people, like a lot of my clients, this is a big goal of theirs, or maybe doing sections of it is a goal of theirs. It takes a lot of planning for permits, like route. You have to like also, I think, learn to surrender a lot on the Pacific Crest Trail because you have your plans and then there's the reality of it. There's a lot of prep work. There's a lot of, anticipation, highs and lows. It's a really epic trail. So Marie did this in 2019. Maybe you can like take us back a little bit. What inspired you to want to hike the trail? Were you outdoorsy before? Give us some details about that.
hmm So it all started when I found the book Through Hiking Will Break Your Heart by Carrot Quinn. I think I saw it on the internet and I loved the illustration on the cover. It's like a woman on top of a cliff. It's beautiful with a sky full of stars. And I thought that word was weird, through hiking. I had no idea what it was, but I was going on a trip to South Africa with a friend of mine and I needed some reading. So I got that book and then I was reading it's like a trail journal. I was reading it and I was like, wow, this sounds like the most amazing adventure. I was always a summer camp kid, so I love nature. I grew up going to summer camp, and I worked as a counselor there. And anyone who's been a camp counselor, you know that you get nostalgic as an adult. You
Yeah.
get nostalgic for those times, for spending your summers outside, and through hiking seemed like
Ultimate summer camp.
yeah, exactly, like my only chance as an adult to live the summer camp experience again.
Mhm.
However, I've never been an athlete. I was always like a artsy klutz. Um, never really good in what do you call it? Physical education class? How do you call it in the States?
Yeah, like PE, yeah.
Yeah,
Physical
yeah. I was
education.
never really good in PE, always got like the ball in the face, stuff like that. So I kind of set it aside after reading about through hiking. I was like, yeah, sounds amazing, but it's not for someone like me. Like
Wait, for context, like when did you read that?
it was 2017.
Okay, so like a couple years before.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I just set it aside. I was like, it's mad. It's not for someone like me. I would just quit after a week. And then it kept bothering me and bothering me and bothering me like a whisper, like a incessant whisper.
Yeah.
Sometimes I compare it to Harry Potter receiving like Hogwarts sending letters to Harry Potter. You
Right.
just can't ignore it. It felt like bigger than myself. And I didn't decide to do it. It's almost like I surrendered because I was
Mm,
tired of the obsession. I was like, I cannot spend. So the first summer after I discovered through hiking, I was like obsessed with through hikers and following them on Instagram. And then when the second summer was about to come, I was like, I cannot do that for another summer. Cannot be so obsessed for another summer. So I
yeah.
have to do it.
I love that. That you kind of you've read Big Magic before, right?
Yes, last
Yeah.
year.
That's one of my favorite books. But it reminds me of like that part of the book where she talks about how like I ideas are like alive and they come to you to be collaborators. And I think like she talks about in the book how sometimes ideas like they'll see if you want to collaborate with them, and then if you're not interested they kind of like go find the next available collaborator. But I do feel like there are some ideas that are like, no, you are the vessel, like I need to
So
be
true.
birthed through you, like it's important.
Like, there was no ignoring it. I would have been so miserable not
Right.
to go. People
Yeah.
told me, like, oh, you can wait. No, I can't wait. Like, for my mental health, I can't wait. It's weird.
So,
And, one thing I want to add is it didn't make sense. I was like, it's mad. But sometimes, like, it's only going to make sense a few years down the line. Now I
right.
know why I had to do it. It completely changed my life, but back then it didn't make any sense. And I could have, I couldn't have tried to make it make sense.
Actually, our stories are pretty similar in that way. Like, I didn't do the PCT or something like that, but I had entered into this year where I was just saying yes to things. And I got invited on that backpacking trip, and it felt like kind of wild for me because I had never done anything quite like that. And like saying yes to that was just like something I felt compelled and I had to do. And I wouldn't have known then like the impact of saying the yes to that thing. But like looking back now, exactly kind of like you, like it transformed basically my whole life.
Yeah.
Um, that made me think, okay, so that's 2017, kind of 28. It must have been 2018 that you were like, fine, I'm gonna do it. Like, stop bugging me idea, and like we're gonna do it. Had you done any backpacking before the PCT?
The longest I'd done was a 4-day backpacking trip.
Okay. So did you have some of the gear already, or like where were you at when you were kind of like getting prepared for these things? Like
Yeah.
how did you feel like as a backpacker?
I felt like a beginner. Well, I was not a beginner at being in the woods. I was
Mhm.
used to being in the woods. But I had to buy all the gear because the gear I had was super heavy.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So you had your yes moment. I'm assuming you applied for permits. You
The
won.
yes moment, actually, there's a story around that.
Okay, let's hear
It
it.
was like 4 days before the permits, the date where the permits are
Open.
open. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was lying in bed and I had posted an illustration on Instagram. It was like a to do or not to do the PCT with my like list of pros and cons. And I had like a massive tsunami of messages from people that had done it, and they were explaining to me why I could actually do it.
Mm.
And it was um mind-blowing because it made me realize, oh, these people are just like me. They're just ordinary people, and if they can do it, maybe I can too. And one of the
Yeah.
person that contributed most was the whimsical woman on YouTube.
Mm.
She's just like a artsy woman who documented her whole hike of the PCT, and she like falls flat on her face and she's funny and she's like a little bit weird, and I was like, oh, we're kind of similar, so maybe if she can do it I can too. Yeah. And then I was reading all those messages and then I went to bed. I was lying in bed and I was like, fuck it, let's give it a try.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's like one of the things that calls the PCT to so many people. Like, you're like, I'm an everyday person. I want to do this thing. Like other everyday people do it too, but it like feels like such an adventure that you're like embarking on. Like there's something really, you just know, anytime I think about the PCT, which I've considered doing it before too, it's just like hard to convince myself to take 6 months off of working on my business. Um, I always think like it feels like you won't be the same by the end of it. Like something will shift inside of you and you don't know what that is. And I think that's what's exciting about it. You're like, I don't know what it is that I'm going to discover about myself or in the process or what I'm going to let go of or what I'm going to like lean into or, whatever it is. But I think that's what's really kind of magical about the PCT. I'm sure you like met a lot of people too with like all different stories and like reasons why. Um, okay, so you had your yes moment when you got you applied for permits, you got the permits. Was that like your oh shit moment? Like what was it like to start preparing for that? I know logistically for a lot of people it's like there's the dream of it and then there's the like reality of like getting ready for it. Can you walk us through some of
Yeah. I was so excited. When I
them?
got the permit, I was all in. I was all in. There was no doubt. I had 4 months to prepare. And what was super helpful is I created a giant calendar. I just took some like paper out and I put a giant calendar on my wall with different categories next to it, with like food, with like career logistics, with gear, and they were kind of giant to-do lists. And I
Yeah,
had post-its, and I had like this big wall dedicated to my project. Um, and I was taking it one bite at a time. Yeah,
nice.
and one thing that I remember helped is I signed up. I'd never been someone who works out really, but I was like, well, it's gotta start now. I gotta
Yeah,
so I signed up to a spinning class. And to me, it needs to be on the calendar and there needs to be some incentive. And with spinning, the incentive was it's expensive and I paid for it. So if I don't show up to class, then I lose money. So it was on
right,
my calendar. I was paying the money, so I would show up at like things like showing up at 7 in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I changed, like committing to something that truly lights me up made me
right,
change even before I set foot on the trail. I would like
right.
get up super early. I would walk everywhere, go to spin classes, and yeah, because I knew it was going to be hard. I was very realistic that it was
Yeah.
going to be hard, and I knew I had to put so much effort in order to accomplish this dream of mine.
And I think that's what's like so valuable in setting goals that really excite you is that it does kind of like you kind of start rising to the occasion and becoming that person ahead of time that can step on the trail. Like it motivates you in a way because of like, as life coaches, we're like, it's because of the thoughts we're thinking. We're like very excited thoughts that we're thinking about this goal. But that's kind of what a great thing about an exciting goal is it gives us that like excitement, momentum for a dream.
Yes.
Um, I'm really curious because I know you've told me about this before, and I'm sure like other people are thinking about this too, but you were in a long-term relationship at the time when you were about to embark on the PCT. Can you walk us through what that conversation, because your partner didn't go with you, walk us through what that was like?
Yes. Okay. So that was one of the big reasons why I was hesitant to go.
Yeah.
Is my partner didn't want to come. He was studying at the time, so he needed to spend his summers working. Um, and I was like, well, I can't leave for 6 months because he's gonna break up with me. And then at some point, I had a perspective shift. I don't know when exactly, but I know that back in those days, I was listening to the podcast Unfuck Your Brain by Cara Lowenthal, and
Yeah.
it helped me think about things differently. And there was one moment where I was like, you know what? He would actually be freaking lucky to be with someone so badass. If I go and do this thing and come back after 6 months, I'm like, I'm gonna be next level. And it would be his loss if
Right.
he decides to go, not mine.
And it's so
And
true. It's like you want to, and also you like want to be with somebody that is like who sees that as an inspiring thing that you're going after your dreams versus somebody like, I don't know, wanting to keep you small. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons like partners may choose different things. You didn't have kids at the time, and like that
right.
conversation is different for people with kids and families that you have to make those decisions on your own. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's different. But then afterwards, like when I made my decision and told him, time passed, and eventually he was like, you know what, I could come and spend 2 months with you. And we had a conversation about how I could, be help him financially to do the trip. And so he decided to come for 2 months. So he was
nice.
with me for a third of the trail.
I guess I forgot about that part. Yeah. What part,
Uh,
what section did he do with you?
the middle part. So he did the Sierras, Northern California,
Mm,
and Oregon. He
cool.
missed the desert and
Yeah.
he missed Washington.
Yeah.
But one thing I always tell like friends and clients is you have to make the decision first because many people
Right.
will be like, oh, I'll go when my partner says he's ready to go, or I'll go when, but no, you decide, and then your
Yes.
conviction might get them to come.
Right.
But it's
Yes.
your dream, so you decide to go after your dream, and then when other people see how convinced you are, they
Mhm.
might be convinced as well, but don't like rely on them to be sold before you are, you
Right.
know?
You have to sell yourself on your own dream. You have to like be
Exactly.
all in on your own dream. And
Yeah.
then I think like this isn't always happen, but I feel like when you show up with the conviction, like so often I feel like we're looking for validation from people like, "Oh, believe in my dream, believe in me so that I can believe in me." When really the work is believe in me first, and then other people are going to be like drawn into that and really like see your conviction. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
So when you first kind of like presented it to him, what was his initial reaction?
Well, he was like, "Oh, that's a lot. That's a long time. Ugh."
Yeah.
And I remember where we were exactly, and I was like, "Oh no."
You're like, everything I feared is coming true.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But people changed their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
I
was
feel
really
like,
happy that I was like, you have a choice. You can either spend like your summer piling some money, or you can spend a summer like living an experience that you're going to talk about for the rest of your life.
I love
And
that.
and he was really glad that he chose to come.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think like I really love Michael and I do a lot of things, separate and do our own adventures. And, we are always navigating that conversation like, I'm going to be taking this amount of time off, or like, you're going to go on this thing without me or something. But I do feel like that initial conversation sometimes is, especially if it's a longer thing, like I just start seeding ideas. Like for what I usually do is like if I know I want to do something like in the future, I'm just starting to seed ideas into Michael's conscience. I'm like, I think one day I might really want to do this thing. And I'll like I'll put like subtle reminders out it. So then when I have the conversation, I feel like he's already kind of been like accepting
Mhm.
it into his conscience.
And he's
Anyways,
had time to like prepare mentally.
that was just a sidebar because I'm getting ready to do a mini through hike. It's not as long as the PCT, but the oh my gosh. Oh, West Highland Way. I was like, I lost my words.
Oh, cool.
In Scotland with
Yeah.
my friend Ashima and Kara. We're gonna like do it as a girls' trip. And it's also something that he would be interested in. I know because he's like very adventurous and outdoorsy too, but I really just want to do a girls' thing. So I've been like slowly talking about it. And then the other day I set out a book of the West Highland Way on my chair and he saw it and he was like, "What's this?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I might be doing that next year with Kara and Ashima." Anyways, this is just my method, not advice.
Your subtle
Um,
approach, backdoor approach.
my subtle approach, but I love that. Okay, your another question that I know people are probably thinking about is where were you like with your career? How did you make that choice financially? Like, walk us through some of that.
Yeah. I was a freelance designer, art director, illustrator, and I was earning good money and didn't spend much. My only expenses are like books,
Yeah.
and basic life expenses. So I was saving a ton. I managed to save plenty of money the year before, so I felt like I had a good cushion. Yeah.
Nice. So like, yeah, and as freelance, you just naturally kind of had a little bit more flexibility with your
Yeah,
time.
because I was a freelancer, I could tell my clients like I'm leaving in April, so I have to be finished before April and not take any new clients that needed work done after I was going to be gone.
Now, as a coach, what would you say to somebody who's like, but Marie, I don't have a freelance gig like you. Like, what are like, does that mean like I can't do it? Like, what are my options? How would
Yeah.
you kind of tell them to approach this kind
Well,
of?
it's a case by case basis, right? When you're on the trail, you meet tons of people with different um careers and they all find a way. It might take you longer to prepare, but it's when you decide to be in solution mode, like instead of asking yourself, is it possible, yes or no, which is a
Yeah,
closed question,
right,
ask yourself, how can I make this possible? And then you might not have the answer right away. Your brain might go to, I don't know.
right,
Well, just be curious and just stay open to figuring things out. You might realize that there are solutions that you haven't even considered. And
right.
I
And
have people,
it's like asking yourself that question, like, but what if I did know? Like, which is annoying to be asked sometimes when your coach is like, but what if you did know? But it's a really good question to sit down with because that's when you come up with like ideas.
yeah, hang out with the question. It's okay
Yeah,
not to have the answer right away. It's not like an exam.
right. And I also think that there's not like a right or wrong answer sometimes. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we have to just be open to like lots of possible answers.
Yeah, and not judge yourself and not like shut down your ideas. You
Yes.
brainstorm, like in a brainstorm, you don't want to shut down anyone's ideas. Same with like when it comes to a brainstorm with yourself. If you have a crazy idea, like maybe I could do this, then oh, okay, entertain it. Allow
Right.
yourself to entertain it instead of being like, that's unrealistic.
Right. Yeah. And like sitting with it, mulling with it, like allowing the time you need. Cause I feel like sometimes that's how it works. It's like you're thinking through all the ideas and you're like, oh, I don't think I could do that. I don't think that would work. But you're just like writing them all down. And when you're putting your brain to task to like looking for solutions, it's like in the shower, you're thinking about it. On your hike, you're thinking about it. On this,
Exactly.
you're listening to a podcast, you're
Yes.
thinking, oh, how does this apply to me in this problem I'm trying to solve? And then like one day, like, like I love those light bulb moments, but I feel like this happens when
Mhm.
you put yourself to thinking questions that like expand you. You're gonna like have that aha moment. You're like, this is how I could do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's happened to me so many times. But you have to
Yes.
be open
Yeah.
and not have a relationship with yourself where you're like, "Ugh, you're so stupid." No, because
Yeah.
if you shut yourself down, your intuition learns that it's not safe to speak up.
Right.
And
Yeah.
one more thing I want to say about this is lots of people make assumptions, like assume that their boss would say, "No, are you crazy?" But I had so many messages from people because I've encouraged people to try it, have a conversation with your employer.
Yeah.
And I had so many messages from people saying like, "Oh my God, I asked my boss for 3 months off to go on a hike, and they said yes." I
Right.
never thought they would say yes, but it's like it's a co-creation.
Right.
Your boss wants to like a good boss wants to cooperate, right? With
Right.
their
And if you're showing up giving value in your workplace and you're not like
yeah,
somebody they want to lose, like they're more likely to work with you.
exactly.
I feel like the I made the assumption when I was starting my business and I was ready to leave my job, I had been saving up and I was about to go full time with She Dreams of Alpine. I had assumed the reason why I saved up so much and I was like gonna burn the boats is because I had made this assumption that my boss or like my work, I was an engineer, I was like they'll never give me a year off to take travel. So I'm just gonna have to leave and then figure it out from there. So I went in with that assumption, but it was funny when I gave my 2 weeks. So like I had been holding in the secret that I was going to leave for a year, and I gave my 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden there were all these opportunities on the table that they had never talked about before. They were like, well, what if you took a 6 month sabbatical? And I was like, well, I didn't even know that was possible, but I was like, no, I just want to take a year. Like I want to do a full year of travel. And they were like, well, what if you took a year and you come back? Or what if you explore this remote thing that we have if you went into our IT department? I was like, oh my gosh. I think for me, it was important to like, my journey was to like actually fully leave, but it goes to your point. Like, so often we assume, and I never even realized that like I could have probably taken a year off and gone back to my engineering.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it goes back to what we were saying earlier about how you have to sell yourself first. Like they would have never offered like a 6 month sabbatical out of nowhere. Like
Right.
you don't wait for your employer to offer these things. Like,
Yes.
but when you have your own back, um, and you
And like
show
the
up this
reasons why
way,
you want to do it, you're like, look, I'm like, you show up with that attitude that like, I am valuable. Like you want to keep me, like, I'm going to do great work when I get back. I'm gonna feel even more refreshed. I'm going to feel even more
yeah,
creative. I
yeah,
think like, yeah, a lot of people would have the opportunity that they don't think might
yeah.
have that opportunity.
And
Yeah.
one more thing is the worst case scenario. I think many people focus on the worst case scenario. If I leave, my partner is going to break up with me. I'm going to lose my job, da da da.
Right.
And never consider the best case scenario or the most likely scenario that
Right.
actually maybe they won't, or maybe if your partner does leave, it's actually good because you're going to meet someone that's more aligned with you. And maybe it's going to like boost your career because
Right.
it's something to put on your resume through hiking. It's something big to put on your resume. So you don't know how it might influence.
You don't know who you'll meet. You don't know
Yeah.
what paths you'll cross. Like, I love to think about that. I'm like, I'm doing so many things now. I may not know where I'm headed, but like, even when I think about like meeting you and like the weird way we met and we were just friends like on Instagram for a couple years, but then we became like, I don't know, I consider you like a very dear friend now. And I'm like, wow, you just never know what people you're going to meet, what paths you're going to cross. That makes kind of taking risks sort of exciting for me. Like, I'm like, oh, you never know. Like,
Yeah, same.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love
And we
that.
don't want to discredit like real like limitations, but
Right.
you can prepare. Like you can for every obstacle, there's a strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's such a good thing to your point. Like a lot of the coaching that I do in our backpacking program is, people will come in and they'll have their worst case scenario kind of laid out for example, like their first backpacking trip. They're like, I feel a lot of resistance and fear going into this thing. And here are all the reasons why I'm like terrified of it. I'm like, okay, we've entertained the worst case scenario. Great. Like these are important things. Like we can talk through those fears, how we're going to prepare for them, right? I think it's equally important to like spend time. I think like you actually introduced an interesting concept. I always talk about them like, what's your best case scenario? You've already entertained the worst case scenario, but what like if it went perfectly well, what would that look like? And we'll like sit in dreamland for a while. But then also, what's like the neutral case scenario? Like I
The
think
most
I've
likely
even
scenario. Like,
yeah, like I did that too when I quit my job. I'm like, my worst case scenario was like I'm homeless. And like my brain kept going there. Like I just felt like I would run out of money and have nowhere to live and like would have no way to feed myself. And I'm like, is that my realistic worst case scenario? It's just like what my brain was offering me. My
yeah,
realistic,
primitive brain.
right. My realistic worst case scenario was like I probably went to live with my dad or something for a while and then got an engineering job again.
Yeah.
So, and then best case scenario was that the business kept going
Which
and
you're in your best
which
case
I am
scenario
in my
now.
best case scenario. Yeah. Um, so I think it's important to like play with all of them because we don't know how things are going to turn out, but
Hmm.
like only focusing, yeah, on the worst is just going to like keep us frozen and kind of like flight mode, I think. Okay. So we've talked a lot about pre-trail stuff. You want to what was the experience like of being on the Pacific Crest Trail? If you
Well,
could
that's a
sum it
big
up in
question.
like, I know.
I talk a lot about it on my podcast. For those who
Maybe
want to
like
go.
tell us one of your most memorable moments or like something really special from your experience in the PCT.
Yeah. Well, I would say the first 2 months meeting my trail family
Mm.
was so amazing. First, because I was feeling so thrilled to be living my dream. Like every day I was like, I can't believe I'm here. I could die right now. I'm so content I could die right now. And then meeting the kindest, funniest people. It was a small group of us together every day. We wouldn't walk together. I would walk on my own, but we would have lunch together and we would meet up at camp and we would spend time in the towns together.
Did
That
you just like meet these people day one, or did you kind of just like kind of in the folds of your hiking sort of meet them?
in the first 10 days.
Nice.
Yeah. First 10 days. And we got really, really, really close. And they were so kind. And so my top moments are these first 2 months with the trail family. And the last month, there was one person left in the trail family, Anna and I, and we got really close. Like the two of us. We were
Yeah.
always together. At night, we would lie down in our tents and we would chat about the day, like each in our own tent. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the closeness and the connection. And
I
of
think
course,
that's
like the landscape and the amazing landscape and being moved like the whole last month. I would like cry every day. I feel like I had been cracked, my heart had been cracked open at how
Mm.
capable I was. So this is my top three.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I think that's so interesting. You know, a lot of people can be nervous about going to do something like a huge through hike, like 2,000 miles alone in particular, because it is kind of hard to find people to be like, hey, you want to take 6 months off and like through hike a trail with, especially people that you already know. So, what I think is so interesting is I feel so many people that do the PCT, like a big part of it is the people they meet like along the way.
Mhm.
And I think that's what would excite me the most about doing it is just like the relationships you naturally form through like adventure, challenges, hardships, like highs, lows, sunsets, like all those things.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
That's that's really amazing. What do you think was like your hardest, maybe hardest day on the trail? Like take us to that moment.
I don't know if I have a hardest day.
Hmm.
I think month four, um, month 4 and 5 were really hard, because there's no novelty anymore, and you still feel like you're so far
Yeah.
from the end. And it was through Oregon, walking through Oregon. No disrespect to Oregon, but like after you've been to the Sierras, uh, if it's just not as
You're not going to
impressive.
offend me. Like I'm a Sierra's lady. Like that's where that's where I was like, you know,
So
cutting my
you're like, okay, I know walking. Like I've been walking for a while, and the trail family had gotten smaller because
Yeah.
everyone was going different paces, and I was like missing the novelty and just it felt like a job.
Yeah.
Walking felt like a job. Like wake up, walk, 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 go to bed.
Right.
Over and over and over again was making me crazy.
What do you
Uh,
feel like was motivating you then, like to keep going instead of like giving up in that moment? Because that's actually very real for real life too, because we have these big
yeah.
goals, you're in the middle of it, and it doesn't feel as exciting anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brené Brown calls it the day two feeling.
that day
It's
too.
the middle part. Many people give up at that
Yeah,
time. But to me, what was helpful is I knew before I got started, I didn't want quitting to be an option. You know, unless I got badly hurt or unless someone really important to me passed away. I
yeah,
didn't want to consider it as an option because once you open that door, the door is open, you always want to go there. So I
yeah,
just kept telling myself, like, are you done? No, you're not. So you keep going. Whenever my mind had like mind drama, I was like, are you done? No, you're not. So you keep going. Be grumpy all you want, but you keep going because you're not done.
I think like that actually brings out a really valuable tool that people don't they underestimate is like talking to yourself. And I do this all the time. Like have conversations with your negative thoughts. Like I a lot of times will feel overwhelmed because I tend to be the kind of person who wants to do a lot of things. Like I get really excited about a lot of things and I'll jump headfirst into a lot of things. And then when I'm in the middle of it, kind of like you're talking about being in the middle of your hike, I'll get overwhelmed and I'll have overwhelming thoughts and I'll have to have conversations with myself. Like, Allison, this overwhelming thought is a choice. Like, what else could we think? Like, what else is true? Like, let's have different conversations. Like, keep going. Like, you got this, bitch. Like, let's go. Like, I don't know.
But then we also have to be able to know when to quit. Because
Right.
for some people, there's no shame in quitting. Sometimes you chose to do something that was not aligned with you or is no longer aligned, and knowing when to push yourself versus when not to is an art.
Do you feel like I feel like sometimes for me, it's very clear when and I'm saying this like I'm not saying people are complaining when they quit, but like it's very clear to me when when I'm complaining to myself versus when I know like what I need to do is to do something different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
I
that
feel
comes
like
with
it feels different.
self-awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah, because when you say like you've got overwhelming thoughts, sometimes it might be because you have actually overwhelmed yourself and you need to
right.
take things off your plate in order to feel better. Sometimes that's the case. But yeah, I think it comes with self-awareness. Am I just like complaining because it's challenging, or is it truly no more coming from my heart?
Yeah. Like what feels like that's kind of like something I've been leaning into, questions I've been leaning into lately is like, what thoughts am I having? What feels like truth? What feels like freedom? So like when I look at what my brain's offering me, like sometimes you're like, this is too like my overwhelming thoughts. This is too much. Like you're biting off more than you can chew, or you're doing it wrong. I don't know, whatever my negative brain is, this vague example I'm giving. But sometimes I'll ask myself, does that feel true? And I'll be like, I don't really feel like that feels like truth to me. Like what's really happening is this, like if I'm being honest with myself. So,
Yeah.
but
And
sometimes, yeah.
I think sometimes our body can tell us as well. Like if on the
Yes.
trail, when I was having a hard time, if I had asked myself, okay, how would it feel to quit? The feeling would have been heaviness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
How would it feel to keep going? Oh, it feels hard, but it feels like a full body yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Like it
moving
feels more like truth. It
forward.
feels more like
Yes,
freedom.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's similar to what you're sharing. We just think of it differently, but yeah, it feels like truth. Even though it feels hard, it feels like my truth.
Yeah. Like it opens you. It doesn't like close you
Yeah,
necessarily.
you're not trying to force yourself into a mold. You're pushing
Right.
yourself forward, but you're not trying to push yourself into someone that you're not.
Yeah. No, I love it. Like I'm glad we had this conversation because I feel like these are moments that all of us have not only like just in life in general, but like on the trail too. Like women, you're having these moments on the trail where you're doubting yourself. You're like, can I do it? You're having this negative self-talk. Like, sometimes there are moments where like the fear is high and you do want to be like, ask yourself, would it just feel better to leave right now? And sometimes that answer is yes. Like sometimes like your nervous system is just not regulated. You just need to like give yourself the peace and leave and just go back and like you have that option. But sometimes, the answer is like, I got this, like I can do this. You just need to shift the conversation in
Hmm.
your brain and keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you've got to make the call and then, learn after.
Yeah. That's so true too. Yeah. Like sometimes we make a decision and maybe we would have done something different looking
You're
back.
like, oh,
But
okay, I pushed myself too hard.
yeah.
I didn't listen to myself. And then afterwards, and so you get to know what it feels like, what truth feels like.
Right. Yeah. Especially if you're like in the beginning phases of like really learning to trust yourself, learning to trust like making your own decisions. And like
Yeah.
obviously we all make our own decisions, but sometimes like we have defaulted so much to other people having opinion on our decisions that it's hard to kind of tap into like what our truth is.
Yeah, we
Uh,
should ourselves.
yeah.
Oh, I should do this because what would so and so think? Oh, I should do this because I would seem more courageous.
Yeah. Or so and so doesn't think I should do this. Maybe I shouldn't. Like, even if you're like, so and so doesn't think I should do this, and you're like, does it feel true to me? Like, should I not do it? Instead of asking yourself that question, you just trust them instead of listening to what the answer is for
Mm.
yourself.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like we could talk about the PCT stuff like all day. I do want to shift a little bit. One quick question I have is I know you because we have been friends for a while, but maybe for the audience, you can tell us like after the PCT, did you just keep like some people go on a through hike and then they just like they're like, I'm gonna through hike this trail, I'm gonna through hike this trail. They like start doing all the through hikes. What
Yeah,
was
no.
like adventure for you after?
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm done. I've done it. I've showed myself I can. Like now I just want to be comfortable.
Yes.
Um, so okay, so you want me to tell you about what happened after? After the thing is, I felt so aligned for 6 months that afterwards going back in misalignment was not possible. It's
And that's
like,
a work, that's work you do a lot with your clients too. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so it became really like my job didn't feel right anymore, so I had to figure out what else to do, and that was like a transition. I had to explore different
Yeah.
things. Um, the first thing I did, so I went back to work, but I was a freelancer, so I had some flexibility there. On the side, I created workbooks for the thru hikers, like pre-trail and post-trail workbooks that are
Yeah, those are so cute.
they're still for sale.
Find them on Amazon
Yeah.
or
Um,
yeah, other places too. I don't know, but
on Amazon only now. I used to like mail them myself, ship them myself, but I got tired of standing in the line at the post office. So the first thing I did is create an online course after those workbooks. I created an online course for to help people prepare for a through hike, but mostly like the mental preparation.
Mm,
I said back then I was saying I wanted to be the Brené Brown of hiking.
I love that.
That's when we actually met because you were like my sister introduced me to you. She showed me your account and she was like, "Look, it's one of your competitors. She's also working with hikers." So yeah.
Weren't
Uh
you like, you were like, "Meh,
yeah, a little bit.
I
And
don't
then
want to meet her."
And then eventually I realized, you know what? I don't want to talk about hiking anymore. I don't care. What I care about is like pursuing what calls you,
Yeah,
pursuing your calling. That's what I care about, and that's what I want to help people with. If it's a through hike, it's going to be a through hike, but I want to be able to help people be more brave. And so
yeah.
that's when I signed up to coach training. And from there, I started coaching and yeah.
And yeah, now she's an amazing coach. We'll kind of like go into like how you work with people now a little in a minute. But so okay, before we completely close the chapter of what Marie does in the outdoors, I am curious, like, I feel like lately you've actually had kind of a physical reinvention or not physical reinvention, but like you're like getting back into like being a little bit more outdoorsy again. Like you're going on a lot more camping trips. You're like getting into cycling, it seems like. What are
Yes,
you interested in right now?
I did a lot of cycling this summer, gravel bike,
Yeah.
um, because my partner loves it.
Yeah.
And we go on camping trips, but like simple camping trips. I'm not into like big days of hiking. I
Yeah.
want simplicity because I love being in nature. I love to camp, but I want to be able to like wake up in the morning and read my book by the stream.
Yeah.
Stream.
Scream. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, like I'm done with big days. I've shown myself I can do it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Speaking of relationship, I am curious because like I think this is something you talk to a lot on your Instagram. That was also kind of like on this podcast, we talk a lot about like adventurous reinventions, and I would consider kind of your kind of shifting into a new relationship, exploring what that looks like for you is one of your adventurous reinventions since I've known you. Um, do you want to talk a little bit more about that journey? Like
Sure.
you made a change in who you were dating and like exploring what that meant for you. Like maybe walk us through some of that kind of journey for you.
Yeah. So, well, one of the hardest decisions of the last few years was leaving the partner I was with when I went to hike the PCT. We'd been together for 7 years. But I was getting to know myself and we were no longer aligned. I use that word a lot, don't I?
It's a good word. I think it's
Uh,
complicated to like explain things in like one sentence. Aligned is like simple way to
mm,
concise it.
I was not the same person than when I met him.
Yeah.
We grew apart. So I decided to leave. Again, if you want to dive deeper into this decision, I have a podcast episode about this, the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. But yeah, I left him and then I came out as queer. I kind of knew it deep down, but I needed this space to explore.
Yeah.
So I came out as queer and I dove into non-monogamy. And that's how I met my partner because he's also into non-monogamy. And we've been together for 10 months now, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
I
we've
just
been
remember like
exploring together.
witnessing you through that journey, like it was fun because it was kind of like, it was like a PCT almost. It was like,
Oh,
okay, the
yes.
courage to make the decision, right? And then the courage to like find yourself, explore what that meant. And then the messy middle where you're like, have I done have I made mistake? Like, I don't know what I'm doing,
Yeah, yeah,
freaking
yeah. You
out.
were there through all of it. So
Yeah.
funny. Like, making the hard decision and then like my sexual awakening and
Yeah.
exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now, yeah, it seems you like found a really like perfectly aligned partner.
Oh yeah, I always well it was important for me to be with someone who's adventurous in the same ways as I am and
Yeah.
who's super purpose driven. I grew
Yeah.
up with my parents are entrepreneurs and for my whole life they had a business together. That was super inspiring to me and I kind of always wished I had that and I
Yeah.
was gaslighting myself like telling myself it's okay. My ex was an engineer, so very
Yeah.
different careers. I was like, it's okay. You don't need it. But actually, no, I don't need it, but I want it. I want
Right.
someone who's as purpose driven as I am, someone I can do projects with. And that's the case now. And I'm so happy because that's what I always wished for. It's not perfect, but it's what I always wished for and never dared to just own. Like what I
Yeah.
learned in this adventure is it's okay to let yourself want what you want.
Yeah. And
Because I was
like
like,
you didn't know if you would find it, like too. Which
no.
I think is so brave. Like you were just like, I'm gonna like, I don't know, have the formula. Like I'm gonna try to figure this out. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I could be single right now.
yeah,
Um, but there's research that says that people have regrets about what they didn't do,
right. Yeah.
not about what they did, about what they didn't do. So I didn't want to like spend my life. I was fine, in my last relationship. I was
Yeah.
happy enough. It was good enough, but I didn't want to like look back and be like, "Oh, it could have been extraordinary."
Right. And I think like one of the things like both one of our coaches both says is like, you know, redeciding the things that you want like continuously as you grow and as you like age is like so important. And so it's like sometimes like and like you can see this as a sad thing or like a beautiful thing. I choose to see it as like a really beautiful thing. Like sometimes things are for only like if you're thinking of your life as a book and you're like, this was perfect for this chapter. And I am deciding that this new chapter is a little different. Like I want to explore what that looks like. And it doesn't mean anything in the past was wrong. It was perfect for where you were then. And you're just deciding something new.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you choose your partner again today? Would you choose your career again today? Like, just know that you're allowed to change your mind. And yes, it
Yes.
might hurt some people's feelings, but it's your life at the end of the day. Like, don't get me wrong, I felt so guilty. I think when you've been conditioned as a woman, lots of us feel lots of guilt
Yeah. And like
for
we'll hang on to things because of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
for making like quote unquote selfish decisions. But at the end of the day, it is my life that I'm living, and we're all adults. So he was responsible. I felt guilty for creating, like, bringing havoc into his life. But at the end of the day, he's responsible for what he does in his life. And
Yeah.
now he, like, from what I've heard, lives in the mountains on the West Coast, which he always wanted to do. He's in a relationship with someone who seems like a much better match. So, and even if that was not the case, it's his responsibility. We take so much responsibility. Again, for those of us conditioned as women, we take so much responsibility that's not ours on our shoulder, and that
Right.
keep us from like living our life to the fullest.
Yeah. I totally agree. Anyways, I just wanted to bring that
I'm
up
on my
because I know like
soapbox.
yeah, but there's so many people out there who maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's like going on a PCT trail. It's just like these conversations I think are valuable to have because it's interesting to see how people have navigated it in their own life and like how they've shown up for it. And also how like Marie has some like amazing experience in her back pocket to like help you navigate big, bold, courageous decisions that you may be wanting to make in your life as well.
And
Um,
I seem confident, like it was all easy. There was so much crying, like there was
right.
so much hardship and self-doubt. It's just after the fact, looking back, I'm like so thankful that I made those brave decisions.
Right. I have like honestly some of the big like decisions in my life. I don't really have any regrets. Like, you know, when you're making those decisions, it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation, like what feels like truth, what feels like freedom. And like in your moment, it felt more like truth and more like freedom to like go explore and see if you could find what was exactly what you wanted out of a relationship than it was to stay. That didn't feel as true for you.
Hmm.
Um, where was I going with this? I feel like I haven't ever looked back at those big decisions that I've made, like the divorce that I got and, you know, starting this business and leaving my career. Like I've never regretted taking those
No,
leaps of faith, even though, yes, they were hard. They were
because
like
your
challenging moments.
truth.
Yes.
You were tuned into your tr what felt true, so you
Yeah.
can't regret that.
The things that I regretted more, like you said, yeah, were the things that when I like put an idea aside because I was like, oh, I don't know if I can. Like, I don't know.
Hmm.
Because you'll always wonder. Like, I think it'll always nag at you. Like,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, anyways. So let's talk a little bit about your business. Self Growth Nerds. You did your through hike. We kind of talked about what brought you to life coaching. What work do you primarily do with people now with your clients?
I do a course that's called The Courage to Start New that I really love. It's 8 weeks, and we meet every week and prepare for big transitions. It's for anyone who feels like they're going in circles. Their inner fire is no longer alive. They feel bored. They feel disconnected from their enthusiasm. And we look at what's missing. We look at what you've been ignoring and what you want to actually pursue, and we go for it.
Yeah.
So I love doing that course, which I'm going to do in the new year in 2025. And then I love doing one-on-one when people want to go deeper. Um, we work together, and my framework focuses on three things. One of them is big vision, getting clear on your vision, because lots of
Yeah.
people don't really know what they want in the direction they're going into. They're kind of just going with the flow, just doing life, but never slowing down to ask themselves really important questions about what's going to make them feel fulfilled. And like when they're lying down, when on their deathbed, what's going to make them feel proud, and
Right.
making like hard decisions to align with that. So
Yeah.
that's the part number one of my framework. Part number two is when you speak about your big vision, when you own it, lots of fears come up. So
Right.
it's looking at the fears and rewiring your programming because we're
Right.
programmed to stay in the cave.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got to rewire that so that you can build the nervous system capacity and the mindset to go out of the cave and after what you really want. That's
Yeah.
part two. That's work that I really love. And part three is focused action. So not just talk. I have a bias for action. What are you
Yeah.
going to do about it? What are you going to do this week? So that's where I help my clients get out in the field, try different things, fail, try from their, learn from their failure, and course correct. I
Right.
mean,
I love it.
take a step, assess, take another step, and yeah.
Yeah, it like that process is like exactly what we do with backpacking. It's like you pick that goal trail, you have that vision, right? All the fears and panic, pre-trip panic comes up. We work through that. Like, how do you actually get to the point where you're taking the action, right? And then, like, what is that action? What is the being willing to like make the mistakes, being willing to like have experience that doesn't go exactly how you imagine it and how you make those pivots and keep going. So
Mm,
I love that.
exactly. That's how you expand your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. I want to do some rapid fire questions just for fun
Uh,
so people can get to know Marie a little bit better. And yeah, let's just go through it. So, first one I wrote down is easy. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Used to be a night owl. Now I'm a morning person.
What does morning person mean to you, though?
Well, yeah, not that early. I wake up at 7-ish.
Okay. That's kind of me. Like, I'm not a morning person, but I'm not like I don't sleep until like 9. Yeah, I like wake up at 7.
I love to go to bed early now.
What do you mean by early?
Like 10.
Nice. We're the
Yeah.
same, I think. Okay.
Samesies.
If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh yeah. I struggle with this one because I love seafood, but my partner is allergic. So
Oh,
I can't eat seafood for the rest of my life, even though it's my favorite. Because then I would always have to like brush my teeth and uh, like before I kiss him. So
yeah, that would be
that's
complicated.
that's off the table. There's this poke bowl I really love
I
that
love
doesn't
poke.
have any seafood in it. In a restaurant near my place. It's got kimchi.
Okay.
It's a kimchi poke bowl full of like really fresh vegetables, rice, and kimchi. It's amazing.
That sounds solid.
So
Yeah.
I would go for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were a piece of gear, what would you be and why?
I'm glad I prepared ahead of time
I know. I
for
saw, I was like, I know she's gonna need to think through some of these.
yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, this is hard. But honestly, the first idea that came to mind is like those metal coffee cups,
Oh, yeah.
those like
Okay.
lightweight
They're
coffee
so
cups.
cute too. I could
They're
totally see
s-
you being
they're
those.
so cute. My friend has a purple one that I love. I choose this because it's like it brings you comfort. Coffee on the trail was like what
Aw,
brought me the most comfort, and it gives you energy. So like
I
the mix
love
of
that.
comfort and energy.
I could totally seeing you being this if you were a piece of gear.
Well,
Okay. This actually reminded me that I didn't like ask you this question, which I'm sure people would want to know, is like, what was your trail name on the PCT?
oh, it was Poppins.
Poppins. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, for Mary Poppins because my trail friends said I had like a wild imagination.
And you had this like sort of, you had like a Mary Poppins sort of style, I feel like, on the trail too. You had like that umbrella that was like really colorful.
Yeah, but I
Your
got the
outfits are
umbrella at
really
the end.
colorful. Yeah. Oh, you did?
I got the umbrella at the end only, and I mean it matched my trail name perfectly, although it was not on purpose. And now I have a tattoo of an umbrella to remember the PCT by.
Oh, yeah. Can't you see it like on your arm? If you are watching the video of this, you might be able to see it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, back to rapid fire questions. A skill you've always wanted to learn.
Well, it's not well, I guess it's a set of skills. If I could have like another career, I would love to get into book editing
Oh, interesting.
and
Nice.
book publishing. I'm so passionate.
You would be really good at that. You read a lot.
Yeah, I read a lot and yeah, so Maybe one day,
And
who
you
knows?
have
I
lots
mean,
of opinions on it. So
yeah,
you'd be
exactly.
good at it. Okay, if your life were a book, what would be the title?
The idea that came to mind is the name of my course, The Courage to Start New,
Oh, I love
because I started new pretty often.
Yeah, that's perfect. I was curious what you would say for that one.
Or
Um,
the thought that just came to mind, it's not a good idea. But the wallflower becomes the bright flower.
I love it. Or just Poppins adventures. Um,
Yeah, I love it.
what is your favorite way to spend a weekend? I think I already know the answer to this.
Yeah, you do. I love to clean my house. This is being 35. I love to clean my house, to read, to hang out with friends, to have a lot of time to chill, to drink coffee, go for a little walk. I don't want to be rushed.
Yeah, I see that for you. Okay, we'll end on this note. Well, we'll end on like talking about how people can listen, find you, and work with you. But before that, what do you think is the best advice you've ever received?
I love this question so much. I have to give credit to my dad. He's the ultimate visionary, the ultimate coach, even though he's not a coach, but he told me my whole life, you're responsible for being an active designer of your life.
Mm,
You're in charge.
I love that.
You gotta create your own life.
That's beautiful. You have like a very inspiring dad quote to go off of. I love it.
Yes.
Okay, Marie, we could talk honestly for hours and hours and hours. We've already gone a little over the hour, so thank you for sticking with me. Um, how can listeners find you, work with you? Like, where's the best place where they can go?
Just self-growth nerds on Instagram, and my website also is selfgrowthnerds.com. So, and self-growth nerds is the name of my podcast. On You can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts if you want to dig into what we discussed. And Allison's been on my podcast if you want to hear some more Allison.
Yeah, a couple times actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have you back again because, like I said, I literally think we could talk for like endless hours. Sometimes we have to
Mm.
like when we're hanging out, we have to be like, okay, stop talking. Like we need to
Stop
sleep.
talking. We're going to sleep. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. Okay, well, I will be dropping all of those links that Marie mentioned into the show notes. So if you want to find a quick link to them, you can find them there in the show notes. Thank you so much, Marie, for
Thank
being our very first
you.
podcast guest. And yeah, y'all check out Marie. She's an amazing human. She's doing amazing work. And I know that she could help you with anything that you're kind of mulling through and that you need some courage and support to kind of go into a new adventure. So thank you so much for being here, Marie.
Thank you, Allison. Love you.
Love you. Bye, everyone. See you next week. Hey, I wanted to thank you real quick for tuning into the show and listening all the way to the end. If you love this episode and you want deeper support in becoming a safe, confident, and self-sufficient hiker and backpacker, then head over to shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist to learn more about our Backpacking Badass coaching program, where I teach you absolutely everything you need to know to be self-reliant on the trails and stop waiting around on others for the adventure invite. So I'd love to help you more in your journey of stepping into your adventurous identity, and that program is the absolute best place for us to start working together. So again, that's shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist, and you can learn all about it there. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you get to spend some time outside this week, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new episode. Bye.